What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today I want to talk about something specific, and that something specific is Lair of Darkness. I've done multiple discussion videos on this before. I've done multiple deck profiles, one coming up very, very soon with an updated deck list that I actually think is really strong and the best one we've ever had in terms of just like how actual, like, good, even just relative to the other ones, just the best one we've ever seen. But today I want to talk about specifically Lair of Darkness and how I believe this deck can literally beat any single deck in the game. Now I know that's not saying much because, like, a lot of rogue decks, you could say, like, yes, you can take a match from anything, but I truly believe Lair of Darkness is one of those decks that's slept on more than, honestly, so many. I don't want to say it's the most slept on deck of all time, but for sure it's up there. And so today I'm going to be talking about a couple of reasons why people have been sleeping on this deck that shouldn't have, and why it can just steal sets out of thin air from decks that aren't expecting it. So yeah, starting off, we're going to start off with Lair of Darkness itself, okay? This is the insane field spell the deck is based around. It allows you to tribute an opponent's monster instead of tributing your own. It allows you to, it actually changes all monsters on the field to dark attribute, and it'll give whatever player's end phase it is tokens equal to the number of monsters that were tributed that turn. So mainly, like, the first thing, it's a floodgate. I mean, it does just make everything dark, and that actually hurts. I mean, imagine something like Salamangrate. They've got stuff, they've got monsters like Sunlight Wolf and Heat Leo, which require fire monsters. That's it, just fire monsters. And Lair of Darkness says you have no fires ever. They literally cannot make Sunlight Wolf or Heat Leo under Lair of Darkness, and that is a huge, huge problem for them. Secondarily, like, there's stuff with, like, the token effect that can actually be a downside for your opponent sometimes, because if you give something like Sky Strikers a token or two, they clog up their main monster zones, and now they can't activate any Sky Striker spells without clearing them off the field, and they're kind of stuck there, at least for your turn, which allows you to make big pushes that they might not be able to combat anymore, because now their Widow Anchors and, like, Shark Cannons are all turned off, right? So this card's insane. It's a straight up floodgate, and then distributing your opponent's stuff is insane as well. So just an insane level of removal that kind of goes hand in hand with Lilith here, because she's a quick effect, so it's not just removal in tandem with Lair of Darkness, but it's a disruption that then gets you to a trap as well. This card's insane. It doesn't even search. It sets it straight to the field, so cannot be ash blossomed as well, and that also just makes this card insane. You know what I mean? It just doesn't lose, like, anything. Like Gamma, I guess, but even Gamma feels like not that choice, because if you tribute yourself, if she tributes herself, your opponent's like, do I really want to Gamma this? I keep them from getting a trap, but, like, the Lilith already tributed itself, so, like, it's not even like I'm getting the removal and the negate, I'm just getting a negate. So it's like, it's so annoying for people to have to play around this card. This card is insane. Actually insane. This card's amazing, especially when Lair's on the field. Next up, Super Poly, okay? This deck is, next to Zombies, as being the best deck to be able to play Super Poly in. Literally doesn't matter what the format is, doesn't matter what decks are great in that current format, because your field spell turns everything dark anyway. And there are generic fusion monsters that just require 2 dark monsters, 3 dark monsters, or any 2 monsters with the same attribute, dark, and different types. Right, so there's just so many generic options for this that this pairs with Lair of Darkness so insanely well that you don't even have to worry about the format. Yes, can the format make this a little bit better? Sure, because it means you don't have to open Lair with it to make it better. But when you open this with Lair, it just feels unfair, right? Like, you just rip 3 monsters off the field on your way to making like a summon negate. That's 3,000. Like, how do you beat that? It's so impossibly hard to beat something like that. So Super Poly is insane. Don't sleep on it. And formats will come where this card becomes better and Lair becomes slightly better because of it. Next up is this deck's ability to take advantage of trap cards. Keep in mind, Lilith can search any normal trap card in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's insane, right? Like, we always sleep on stuff like that. So some of the cards we're going to go into, and I didn't even put it in here, but I'm going to mention it now. Ice Dragon's Prison is a new trap. This deck abuses it very, very well. It just searches it so easily. The card's insane. It seems to work versus every single deck in the game. It just doesn't matter. So good. Salamangrates, Dragon Link, Infernobles, even stuff like That's the new deck. Virtual Worlds, good against them. It's literally good versus like everything. Zodiac, very good versus them as well. It feels unfair. That card just hits literally everything. It's insane. Nextly, though, the card on the screen, Artifact Sanctum. This deck can make great use of this because a lot of people don't like playing something like Sanctum in their main decks anymore, just because they don't feel like they can consistently get to Sanctum enough to warrant playing something like a main deck Scythe. But this deck actually, one, doesn't actually hate playing multiple Scythes and a Mortal Attack, so you can play a full suite of artifacts in the main deck, and Sanctum, because not only do you have 3 Sanctum, but you have Trap Trick, 1 or 2 copies of that. You have 3 copies of Lilith, and if you play Ties of the Brethren, that's 3 more copies of a card that can get you to Lilith, that can get you to Sanctum, right? So you play 10 plus ways in your deck of getting that get you to Sanctum, and that's insane. I mean, that's a real consistency, and a card like this is so strong because even if you open you could open a completely terrible hand going first, 4 terrible cards that don't even do anything, but Sanctum. And you're kind of like, well, I am going to Sanctum them, and they're not going to play this turn. So I at least get to try again next turn and play a little bit of beatdown with an artifact. And that can work. That can actually work. It's crazy. But like, this card makes bad hands good and makes great hands impossibly good. So I love this card, and this deck does a great job taking advantage of it. I already mentioned it, but Trap Trick is just amazing. This card helps with Lilith because she only randomly grabs one of the 3 traps, unfortunately. So just having Trap Trick allows you to essentially guarantee, as long as you have 2 copies of the trap you want in the deck, guaranteeing yourself you get a copy of that no matter what. Or if you draw it, cool. It's just the most versatile card in your deck because it just, other than Lilith, I guess, because it just gets you anything, right? So that's insane. And then the last card I want to mention here that's like particularly cool is Dogmatic Punishment. This card's insane. We already know how good this is in just Dogmatica. And I even thought about playing something like a Lair of Darkness Dogmatica, but I felt like the deck list would end up just getting creeping up there in terms of like how many cards you're playing. And it kind of just takes away. Yes, it can search you Punishment. Punishment's great in Lair, but it doesn't actually search you engine cards. It just searches you potentially Super Poly, I guess, because you could send a Chimera Rafflesia. But it is insane, and this is just a classic example of another insane normal trap that's generic that just becomes really good in this deck, because I used to play Ballista Squad because you could tribute an opponent's monster to then pop another card. But if you didn't have access to Lair, Ballista Squad was so bad, right? Ballista Squad was a terrible card if you didn't have Lair. So I didn't want to play a card that was so reliant on playing Lair. And by playing less cards in your deck that are reliant on Lair, you don't have to play 10 copies of Lair. You can play 6 or 7. You don't see it as much. And yes, it does make your deck better, but your deck can still totally function without it. You're drawing Sanctums, you're drawing Dogmatic Punishments, you're drawing all these cards that can like totally win you games outside of seeing Lair plus Lilith. So you don't have to base your strategy all around like one simple combination of 3 ofs in the deck, right? So yeah, Dogmatic Punishment is just another example of that. Sending Intis, sending Chimera Rafflesia. Like, there's other targets too. Those are the main ones, I guess, for Lair, though. But it's just insane. Like, and you could go down a full list of anything. Like, you could go down a full list of 20 different trap cards that you're like, oh, Warning Point, the new trap card that some people think is good. I don't love it, but you could play that in here if you think that's good enough. Like, you play so many things. It's insane. So I really think because of these handful of cards and other cards too, like obviously there's like a ton we could go into, not the Fairy Tale card. This deck can legitimately take on and defeat any single deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Period. Don't care. Like, you just can. I'm not saying it's going to do it consistently, and I want people to recognize that. I'm not saying this deck is tier 1 and people don't realize it. I'm just trying to say this deck on any given set can win a set versus any deck in the game, no matter the format, no matter what. This deck can just beat them. It just can, because you play such insane cards that just can win games. Just resolving one of them can like win you the game. So yeah, I just want to talk about this deck. I love this deck. I'm assuming you guys love this deck as well if you're watching this video, because you know, it's one of my staple decks of the channel. So maybe you've seen a deck profile from me. If not, you probably will in the future. And yeah, it's one of my favorite decks of all time. I love it. So that's going to do it for me here today, guys. I just wanted to go on a little rant, tangent discussion on why I love this deck and why this deck will always have a special place in my heart, because it will always be playable. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet and you want to see more discussion videos like this one in the future. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.